I pulled into the driveway of my childhood home after a 3-day business conference in Denver, my mind buzzing with excitement about the major client contract I'd just secured. The October evening air carried the scent of fallen leaves, and I could see the warm glow of lights through the windows. I couldn't wait to share the good news with my family and celebrate landing the biggest deal of my career so far. But as my headlights swept across the front yard, something stopped me cold. 7 black garbage bags sat lined up beside the front gate like soldiers waiting for deployment. My stomach dropped as I recognized the shape of my belongings bulging through the plastic. My mother Sandra stood on the porch with my younger sibling's 24-year-old brother Jake and 22-year-old sister Emma. Sandra's arms were crossed, her face carved from stone in the harsh porch light. The shadows made her look like a stranger. When she spoke, her voice cut through the evening stillness like a blade. "You're 26, Giles. It's time to get out now." I sat in my car for a moment trying to process what I was seeing. This couldn't be real. I'd been living here my whole life, contributing $800 every month toward the mortgage and utilities since I started my marketing job 2 years ago. I climbed out slowly, my legs feeling unsteady on the familiar concrete driveway. "Mom, what's going on here?" I asked, gesturing toward the bags. "Is this some kind of joke?" Sandra's expression didn't soften. If anything, it hardened further. "No joke, Giles. You're an adult now. You need to learn to stand on your own 2 feet. Jake stepped forward from behind her, and I noticed something that made my blood run cold. He was wearing my watch, the vintage Omega Speedmaster that Dad had given me before he passed away 5 years ago. Jake caught me staring and actually smirked. "We've been planning this for weeks," he said with a casualness that felt like a slap. "While you were working all those extra hours thinking you were so important? Planning this?" The words came out strangled. "Jake, I've been working those hours to help pay the bills here. You know that." Emma shifted uncomfortably behind them, clutching a designer purse I'd never seen before. The leather looked expensive, way beyond what she could afford on her part-time income from the coffee shop. "You make enough now with that fancy promotion," Sandra continued. "It's time you got your own place instead of freeloading here." Freeloading. The word hit me like a physical blow. I thought about all the times I'd handed over my paycheck contribution without complaint, all the groceries I'd bought, the utilities I'd helped cover when money was tight. "Mom, this is my home too. We can talk about this inside, figure something out that works for everyone." "There's nothing to figure out," Sandra said, her voice flat. "Your bags are packed. Take them and go." I walked over to the garbage bags, my hands shaking as I opened one. My clothes were crumpled inside, wrinkled and smelling faintly of the garage. Another bag contained my books and a few personal items, but something was wrong. "Where's my laptop bag? My important documents? The photo albums from Dad's collection?" Sandra shrugged. "I don't know what you're talking about." But Jake and Emma exchanged a look. A quick, knowing glance that told me they knew exactly where my missing belongings were. The whole scene felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. These were the people I'd grown up with, shared Christmas mornings and birthday celebrations with. Emma had been my little shadow when we were kids. Jake and I used to play catch in this same yard every weekend. "Why now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Because you're successful now," Sandra said, and there was something bitter in her tone. "You don't need us anymore." I loaded the bags into my sedan, each one heavier than it should have been. Not because of the weight, but because each bag represented another piece of my life being erased. As I placed the last bag in my trunk, I noticed neighbors' curtains twitching. Mrs. Patterson from next door was watching through her kitchen window, her face creased with concern. "I love you all," I said, turning back to face my family one last time. "Whatever this is about, we can work through it." Sandra had already turned to go inside. Jake followed her, still wearing my father's watch. Only Emma remained on the porch, and for a moment I thought I saw tears in her eyes. I got in my car and started the engine, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. As I backed out of the driveway, I glanced in my rearview mirror one last time. That's when I saw it. A silver BMW pulled into the driveway just as I reached the street. A well-dressed man in his 50s stepped out and walked directly to Sandra, who had reappeared on the porch. He embraced her like they were intimate partners, his hands possessive on her waist. I'd never seen this man before in my life. The Sunset Motel on Highway 42 wasn't exactly the Four Seasons, but it was clean and cheap. And right now, cheap was all I could afford until I figured out what had just happened to my life. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I sat on the thin bedspread trying to make sense of the evening's events. I pulled out my wallet to pay for an extended stay and reached for my credit card. When I tried to use it at the front desk, the machine declined it. Confused, I asked the clerk to try again. "Sorry, sir, but it says your card is over the limit." Over the limit? That was impossible. I'd had a perfect payment history for years and barely used the card except for emergencies. Back in my room, I called the credit card company's 24-hour line. "Mr. Harrison, I show recent charges totaling $4,700, the customer service representative explained. "There are purchases at Tiffany & Company Morton's Steakhouse and several high-end boutiques all within the past month." My stomach dropped. "I didn't make any of those purchases. This has to be fraud." "I can initiate a fraud investigation, but I'll need you to come into a branch with identification to complete the paperwork." After hanging up, I logged into my banking app, dreading what I might find. The screen loaded slowly, and when I saw my account balance, I nearly dropped my phone. $3,000 was missing. Money I'd been saving for my own apartment, ironically enough. The transactions showed electronic transfers to an account I didn't recognize, each one authorized with my personal information and social security number. Someone had been systematically draining my finances for weeks. I called my friend Marcus, who worked in the IT department at our marketing firm. Even though it was past 10 at night, he answered on the second ring. "Giles, man, how'd the conference go? Did you close the Denver deal?" "Marcus, I need to ask you something important. Has anyone called the office asking about me recently? Anyone claiming to be family?" There was a pause. "Actually, yeah. About 2 weeks ago, some guy called saying he was your brother. He wanted to know about your salary and when you'd be getting your bonus. Jenny at reception thought she was being helpful by giving him general information about your promotion." "Why?" My hands clenched into fists. "What exactly did she tell him?" "Just that you'd gotten promoted to senior account manager and that the position came with a significant salary increase. She mentioned you'd been working on some big deals. Giles, what's going on?" I couldn't answer that question because I was still trying to figure it out myself. After hanging up with Marcus, I drove to an all-night diner to think. The coffee was bitter and the fluorescent lights harsh, but I needed somewhere public while I tried to piece together the timeline. 3 weeks ago, I'd announced my promotion at Sunday dinner. Sandra had insisted on seeing my offer letter and employment contract, claiming she wanted to frame them because she was so proud. I'd handed them over without a second thought. Those documents contained my new salary information, my social security number, and my direct deposit account details. The next week, Jake had called my office pretending to be concerned about my workload. The week after that, someone started making unauthorized charges on my credit card and transferring money from my savings account. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Mrs. Patterson, your neighbor. I got your number from Emma. Can you call me? It's important." I dialed immediately, and Mrs. Patterson answered before the first ring finished. "Giles, honey, I'm so sorry about what happened tonight. I wanted to tell you something that's been bothering me." "What is it, Mrs. Patterson?" "Your mother has been telling everyone in the neighborhood that you moved out months ago. She said you'd gotten some big opportunity in another state and decided to pursue it. But I kept seeing your car in the driveway, so I knew that wasn't true." My chest tightened. "When did she start saying that?" "About 2 weeks ago. And there's something else. I've seen moving trucks at your house several times recently. Big ones. Your mother told me she was donating your old things to charity, but honey, those trucks were from expensive furniture stores, not charity organizations." "Furniture stores?" Yes, and that man with the silver car has been there almost every day. I heard your mother on the phone yesterday and she was talking about renovating your room for her new husband's home office. New husband. The words hit me like a physical blow. Mrs. Patterson, did you happen to catch this man's name? William something. William Hartwell, I think. Giles. I don't mean to pry, but something about this whole situation doesn't feel right. After thanking Mrs. Patterson, I sat in the diner parking lot, staring at my childhood home's address in my phone's GPS. I had to see for myself what was happening there. The drive took 20 minutes, and when I turned onto my street, I could barely believe what I saw. Professional security cameras were being installed around the property's perimeter. A new electronic gate system was being fitted at the entrance. The silver BMW sat in what used to be my designated parking spot, which now had a metal sign reading, "Reserved." Workers were still there despite the late hour illuminated by floodlights as they installed expensive equipment. This wasn't a home improvement project. This was a fortress being built around my family's house, and I was clearly not meant to be inside it. The next morning, I sat in a stark conference room at First National Bank while investigator Patricia Wong reviewed my fraud claims. She had the kind of sharp eyes that missed nothing, and her questions were precise and thorough. Mr. Harrison, our preliminary investigation shows the unauthorized access originated from an IP address registered to your home address. She explained, sliding a report across the table. Someone has been accessing your accounts using your mother's internet connection for approximately 6 weeks. 6 weeks. That meant the theft started long before my promotion announcement, long before the conference in Denver. The pattern is sophisticated, Patricia continued. Small withdrawals at first designed to avoid automatic fraud detection. The larger transfers only began after your recent salary increase was documented in our system. So, someone knew about my promotion before I announced it to my family. It appears someone had access to your personal information well in advance of these events. I'm recommending you file a police report for identity theft. An hour later, I sat across from Detective Maria Rodriguez at the downtown precinct. She was younger than I'd expected, but her manner was professional and reassuring. Mr. Harrison, I've seen cases like this before. Unfortunately, financial exploitation by family members is more common than people realize. Adults often justify stealing from their children by claiming it's compensation for the cost of raising them. But this doesn't feel like something my mother would plan on her own. Detective Rodriguez nodded. You mentioned a man named William Hartwell. We'll look into his background. Sometimes these situations involve outside influences who manipulate family dynamics for personal gain. As I left the police station, a man in his 40s approached me in the parking lot. He wore a well-tailored suit and carried himself with quiet confidence. Excuse me, are you Giles Harrison? I couldn't help overhearing your conversation with Detective Rodriguez. My name is David Chen, and I'm a private investigator. I was immediately suspicious. Are you working for my family? David shook his head. No, actually, I think I might be able to help you. I've been investigating cases involving financial manipulation of adult children, and your situation sounds familiar. Something in his tone made me pause. Familiar how? Would you be willing to grab coffee? There are some things about William Hartwell that you need to know. 20 minutes later, we sat in a quiet corner booth at Danny's Diner. David spread several file folders across the table between us. William Hartwell isn't his real name, David began. His legal name is William Morrison, and he's been using variations of his identity for years. I've been hired by 3 different families to investigate him. He opened the first folder, revealing photographs of William with different women, all around my mother's age. His pattern is consistent. He targets recently widowed women with adult children who have stable incomes. He presents himself as a successful businessman looking for companionship, but his real goal is accessing the family's financial resources. David opened another folder. In each previous case, he convinced the mother to force her adult children out of the home while gaining access to their personal information. Once he has that access, he systematically drains available resources before disappearing. How long does this usually take? 6 to 8 months on average. But William has gotten more sophisticated over time. In his most recent case in Franklin County, he convinced a mother named Carol Stevens to take out loans against her house using her son's credit as collateral. David showed me court documents. Carol's son Michael is suing William for over $60,000 in identity theft and fraud. The case is still pending, but Michael's testimony describes exactly what you're experiencing. My hands trembled as I read through the documents. The similarities were uncanny. The sudden eviction, the missing personal documents, the family members who seemed to be acting out of character. There's more, David said grimly. William is currently wanted in 2 other states for similar schemes. He's gotten very good at manipulating family dynamics and exploiting emotional vulnerabilities. So my family really are victims, not perpetrators? Most likely. William specializes in turning family members against each other while he works behind the scenes. In every case I've investigated, the family had no idea how extensively they were being manipulated until it was almost too late. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Emma. Meet me at Riverside Park tomorrow at 2 p.m. Come alone. There's something about William you need to know. Don't tell Mom or Jake. David saw me reading the message. Your sister wants to meet. I showed him the text and his expression grew serious. This could be the break we need. In my experience, there's usually one family member who starts to see through William's manipulation first. They become our best source of information. Do you think it's safe? Riverside Park is public and well monitored. But Giles, you should know that if Emma is reaching out, it means William's timeline is probably accelerating. These predators don't like to stay in one place too long once they sense resistance. As I drove back to the motel that evening, I couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Emma was risking something by contacting me, and whatever she wanted to share was important enough that she couldn't say it over the phone. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together, but the picture they formed was more frightening than I'd imagined. Riverside Park was busy with afternoon joggers and dog walkers when I arrived the next day. I spotted Emma sitting on a bench near the duck pond, wearing dark sunglasses and looking nervously around. She seemed smaller somehow, more fragile than the confident young woman I'd grown up with. When she saw me approaching, she stood up quickly and motioned for me to follow her toward a more secluded area near the walking trail. Giles, thank God you came, she said, her voice shaking. I wasn't sure you'd trust me after what happened the other night. Emma, what's going on? Who is William and why is he living in our house? She pulled off her sunglasses and I could see she'd been crying. Her eyes were red and puffy, and there were dark circles underneath them like she hadn't been sleeping. He's been recording us, she whispered, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. William has cameras hidden in the house, and he's been recording our conversations for weeks. What kind of cameras? Tiny ones. In the living room, the kitchen, even in our bedrooms. But that's not the worst part. Emma's voice dropped even lower. He has photos of me. Private photos that I thought I deleted from my phone. He showed them to me yesterday and said if I didn't cooperate with his plans, he'd send them to everyone I know. My protective instincts flared. Emma, that's blackmail. We can go to the police right now. It's more complicated than that. She sat back down on the bench, her shoulders slumped. William didn't just show up randomly. He planned this whole thing. He's been manipulating Mom for months, playing on her fears about money and the house. What fears? After Dad died, Mom was terrified about losing the house if she couldn't keep up with the mortgage payments. She never told us how bad the finances really were. William found out about her situation and convinced her that you were planning to claim ownership of the house since you'd been making payments. The manipulation was more sophisticated than I'd realized. But that's insane. I never wanted to own the house. I just wanted to help. William planted those ideas in her head gradually. He'd make little comments about how adult children sometimes use financial contributions to take advantage of their parents. He'd show her news articles about family disputes over property. He made her paranoid about your motives. Emma reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. I need to show you something, but you have to promise me you won't do anything reckless. She scrolled through her photos and showed me several images that made my stomach turn. William was in our house going through Dad's belongings. Our father's vintage guitar collection was spread across the living room floor, and William was photographing each instrument with price tags attached. "He's been selling Dad's things," Emma said, her voice breaking. "Mom thinks she donated everything to veterans charities, but William has been auctioning them online. He sold Dad's 1957 Gibson Les Paul last week for $15,000. I felt the blood drain from my face. That guitar was supposed to be Jake's inheritance. Dad had specifically mentioned it in his will. There's more. Emma swiped to another photo showing William at Mom's computer typing while she sat beside him. He convinced her to take out loans against the house. She thinks they're refinancing for better interest rates, but I saw the actual paperwork. She borrowed against the full value of the property. How much? $350,000. And William somehow got himself listed as a co-borrower even though he has no legal claim to the house. The scope of the theft was staggering. Emma, where is all that money going? Offshore accounts. I heard him on the phone talking about investments in the Cayman Islands. But here's the thing that really scares me. She paused, looking around again. He's been giving Jake pills. What kind of pills? He says they're vitamins and stress relievers, but Jake has been acting so weird lately. He's tired all the time and he just agrees with everything William says. He used to question everything, remember. Now he just nods and goes along with whatever William suggests. I thought about Jake's behavior the night I was kicked out. The smirking, the casual cruelty, the way he seemed detached from what was happening. You think William is drugging him? I found the pill bottles in William's briefcase. They're prescription anxiety medication, but the dosage is way higher than what someone Jake's age should be taking. I looked it up online, and long-term use can cause dependency and cognitive impairment. Emma handed me a USB drive. This contains security camera footage from the Hendersons' house next door. Mrs. Henderson installed cameras last month after some break-ins in the neighborhood. She doesn't know I have copies of the files, but they show William going through your car and your room multiple times over the past month. He was stealing my personal information, photographing your documents, going through your mail, copying your computer files. There's also footage of him coaching Mom and Jake on what to say when you got back from your conference. The betrayal cut deeper now that I understood my family were victims too. Emma, why didn't you tell me about this sooner? Tears started flowing down her cheeks. Because I was scared. William made it clear what would happen if I interfered with his plans. And honestly, I wasn't sure you'd believe me. The way he manipulated the situation, it looked like we all just decided to turn against you. I put my arm around her shoulders and she leaned against me like she used to when we were kids. We have to get Mom and Jake away from him, I said. This is way beyond family drama now. This is organized crime. There's something else, Emma said, her voice barely audible. I think he's planning to leave soon. I heard him making travel arrangements for this weekend. He told Mom it was for a romantic getaway, but I heard him booking one-way tickets. He's going to disappear with all the money and Mom will be left with a house she can't afford and loans she can't pay back. Time was running out faster than I'd realized. William wasn't just stealing from us. He was preparing to destroy my family's entire future before vanishing into whatever new identity he'd use for his next victims. Emma, I need you to do something very important. Can you get me copies of those loan documents William had Mom sign? She nodded. They're in his briefcase in Mom's bedroom. He keeps it locked, but I know where he hides the key. Be careful. If he catches you... I know. But Giles, we're running out of time. I think he's planning to take Mom and Jake with him when he leaves. He keeps talking about a fresh start in a new place where they can build a life together. As we walked back toward the parking area, Emma grabbed my arm. There's one more thing. William has been asking a lot of questions about life insurance policies. He found Dad's old policy documents and convinced Mom to take out new policies on you and Jake. He said it was smart financial planning, but the coverage amounts are huge, way more than we'd ever need. The implication hit me like a freight train. William wasn't just planning to steal from us and disappear. He was setting up a situation where our deaths would be financially beneficial to him. This had gone far beyond identity theft and manipulation. William was preparing for something much more sinister, and my family was in immediate danger. Detective Rodriguez leaned back in her chair as I finished explaining everything Emma had revealed at our meeting. David Chen sat beside me, his own files spread across the conference table at the police station. "This changes everything," Rodriguez said. "What you're describing isn't just financial fraud. We're looking at potential kidnapping, drugging, and possibly even plans for physical harm." She picked up her phone and made a quick call. "I'm requesting a federal consultation on this case. If William Morrison is operating across state lines with this level of sophistication, the FBI needs to be involved." David opened his laptop and pulled up a detailed background report. "I've been doing some digging since our last conversation. William Morrison has been using at least 6 different aliases over the past decade. He's wanted in Oregon for elder fraud and in Nevada for identity theft related to a similar family manipulation scheme." "What happened to his previous victims?" I asked. "In Oregon, the victim was a widow named Margaret Chen. William convinced her to force her adult son out of the house, then systematically drained her retirement accounts. When the son tried to intervene, William disappeared overnight, leaving Margaret with over $100,000 in debt and a foreclosure notice." Detective Rodriguez studied the file. "And Nevada?" "Patricia Williams, age 58. Same pattern, but Williams' timeline accelerated when Patricia's daughter became suspicious. Patricia ended up hospitalized for what appeared to be anxiety medication overdose. The daughter believes William was poisoning her mother to keep her compliant." My blood ran cold. "Is Patricia okay?" "She survived, but she lost her house and her life savings. William had convinced her to sign power of attorney documents giving him control over all her financial decisions." Detective Rodriguez stood up. "We need to move fast. Based on this pattern, your family is in immediate physical danger. I'm going to coordinate with federal agents to set up surveillance on your house." "What about Emma? She's supposed to get copies of those loan documents." "We can't ask your sister to take that risk," Rodriguez said firmly. "If William catches her going through his personal belongings, there's no telling how he might react." David closed his laptop. "There might be another way. I have contacts at the bank where your mother refinanced the house. If the loans were fraudulent, the bank will cooperate with a federal investigation." An hour later, we were meeting with FBI Special Agent Sarah Kim at the federal building downtown. She was younger than I'd expected, but carried herself with an authority that immediately put me at ease. "We've been tracking William Morrison for 2 years, Agent Kim explained. He's part of a larger network that targets vulnerable families across multiple states. What makes him particularly dangerous is his willingness to escalate to violence when his schemes are threatened." She showed us photos from previous crime scenes. In Arizona, a family tried to confront him directly. The adult son ended up in intensive care with what appeared to be a drug overdose, though he swears he never took any medication voluntarily. "So the pills he's giving my brother are almost certainly designed to keep Jake compliant and unable to interfere with William's plans. We've seen this before. The medication makes victims passive and confused, but it can also cause serious health complications if the dosage is wrong." Agent Kim pulled out a tablet and showed us surveillance photos. "We've been monitoring William's financial activities. In the past month, he's transferred over $200,000 to accounts in 3 different countries. That money is likely from your family's refinanced mortgage." Detective Rodriguez leaned forward. "What's our next step?" "We set up a controlled operation. Mr. Harrison, we need you to contact your family and request a meeting. You'll be wearing a wire and we'll have agents positioned nearby. Our goal is to get William to incriminate himself on tape while ensuring your family's safety." David shook his head. "That's extremely risky. William is already suspicious about Emma's behavior. If he thinks Giles is working with law enforcement, which is why we need to move tonight," Agent Kim said. "Our intelligence suggests William is planning to leave the country this weekend. If we wait any longer, we'll lose our chance to arrest him and recover the stolen funds." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Giles, this is your mother. We need to talk. Can you come home tonight? William says it's time we worked things out as a family." Agent Kim read the message over my shoulder. "That's either perfect timing or William is more suspicious than we realized." "What do you mean?" "Family reconciliation isn't part of his usual pattern. In previous cases, once he forced the adult children out, he never allowed them back. This invitation suggests he either knows we're investigating him or he's ready to implement the final phase of his plan." Detective Rodriguez checked her watch. "Either way, we don't have much choice. This might be our only opportunity to get evidence and protect your family." Agent Kim handed me a small device. "This is a recording device disguised as a pen. Keep it in your shirt pocket and it will pick up conversations within a 20-foot radius. We'll also have agents positioned around the neighborhood. What if something goes wrong? We'll be monitoring everything in real time. If William becomes threatening or violent, we'll move in immediately." As we finalized the details of the operation, David pulled me aside. "Giles, there's something else you should know. I spoke with my contact at the bank this afternoon. Your mother didn't just refinance the house. William convinced her to take out 3 separate loans using different appraisals and applications. The total amount borrowed is over $600,000. $600,000, but the house isn't worth that much." "Exactly. Which means William used fraudulent appraisals and inflated income statements to qualify for loans your mother could never legitimately obtain. When the banks discover the fraud, they'll likely foreclose immediately." The full scope of William's plan was becoming clear. He wasn't just stealing our money and disappearing. He was setting up a financial time bomb that would destroy my family's lives long after he was gone. "There's more," David continued. "I found records showing that William has been researching the life insurance policies he convinced your mother to purchase. He's been in contact with several different insurance companies asking detailed questions about claim procedures and payout timelines. He's planning to kill us." "It's possible. The insurance policies, combined with his history of escalating to violence, suggest he's preparing for a scenario where your family's deaths would be more profitable than just stealing from them." As evening approached and we prepared for the operation, I realized this wasn't just about getting my life back anymore. My family's survival depended on exposing William's crimes before he could implement whatever final plan he had in mind. The stakes had never been higher, and time was running out. The familiar crunch of gravel under my tires felt surreal as I pulled into the driveway of my childhood home that evening. FBI agents were positioned in unmarked vehicles throughout the neighborhood, and Detective Rodriguez was monitoring my wire from a van parked 2 blocks away. The recording device in my shirt pocket felt heavy against my chest. The house looked different somehow. New security cameras tracked my movement from the gate to the front door. The landscaping had been changed and expensive outdoor lighting cast dramatic shadows across the yard. This wasn't the modest family home I'd grown up in anymore. I took a deep breath and rang the doorbell, even though I'd never had to ring my own doorbell before. William answered the door, and I got my first close look at the man who had systematically destroyed my family's life. He was tall and well-dressed, with silver hair and the kind of confident smile that probably made him very effective at manipulation. But his eyes were cold, calculating. When he looked at me, I felt like he was assessing a potential threat. "Giles, welcome home," he said, extending his hand for a shake. "I'm William Hartwell. I've been looking forward to meeting you properly." His grip was firm, almost aggressive. "Your mother is so excited that you decided to come back and work things out like adults." I followed him into the living room, noting how completely the space had been transformed. Dad's furniture was gone, replaced with expensive modern pieces. The walls where our family photos used to hang were now decorated with abstract art that had no personal meaning. Mom sat on the new leather sofa looking smaller and more fragile than I remembered. Jake was beside her, and I was shocked by his appearance. He'd lost weight, and his eyes had a glassy, unfocused quality. When he looked at me, it took him several seconds to seem to recognize who I was. "Hi, Giles," Jake said slowly, his words slightly slurred. Mom says we need to apologize for the misunderstanding the other night. Emma was nowhere to be seen. Where's Emma? I asked. William answered before Mom could speak. She's upstairs resting. She's been having some anxiety issues lately, so we thought it would be better if she didn't participate in this conversation. The way he said anxiety issues made my skin crawl. I had no doubt Emma was being drugged just like Jake. Mom, how are you doing? I asked, sitting across from her. Sandra smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'm fine, honey. William has been helping me understand how to manage our family finances better. He thinks there might have been some confusion about your living situation. What kind of confusion? William leaned forward, taking control of the conversation. Your mother was concerned that your financial contributions to the household might create legal complications down the road. We wanted to make sure everyone was protected. I decided to probe deeper. Protected from what? Well, when adult children make mortgage payments, it can sometimes be interpreted as establishing ownership rights. We thought it would be cleaner if you had your own place and we could handle the house expenses independently. His explanation sounded reasonable on the surface, but I could hear the manipulation underneath. He was rewriting the narrative to make the eviction seem like a protective measure. I see, and who exactly is we? Sandra spoke up. William and I are engaged, Giles. We're planning to get married next month. Engaged. They'd been dating for 2 months, and now they were getting married. I glanced at Jake, who was nodding along like this was perfectly normal. That's quite a whirlwind romance, I said carefully. William's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. When you know, you know. Your mother and I have connected on so many levels. We have very similar views about family and finances. Speaking of finances, I noticed some unusual activity on my credit card and bank accounts recently. The room went quiet. William's expression didn't change, but I saw Sandra look confused. What kind of activity? She asked. Charges I didn't make, transfers I didn't authorize. The bank is investigating it as identity theft. William stood up abruptly. That sounds like a serious matter. You should definitely work with the bank to resolve that. Identity theft is unfortunately very common these days. Yes, it is, especially when someone has access to your personal information and documents. Now William's mask was starting to slip. Are you implying something, Giles? I'm just trying to understand how someone got access to my social security number account information and detailed knowledge about my employment situation. Sandra looked back and forth between us, confusion growing on her face. Giles, what are you talking about? I pulled out my phone and opened the photos Emma had shared with me. Mom, did you know that William has been selling Dad's belongings? I showed her the pictures of the guitar collection being cataloged with price tags. Sandra gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. William, you said you donated those to charity. William's composure cracked. Sandra, don't listen to him. He's obviously trying to cause trouble between us. These are photos of Dad's guitars being prepared for online auction, I continued. The 1957 Gibson Les Paul sold for $15,000 last week. Where did that money go? This is ridiculous, William snapped. Sandra, we don't have to listen to these accusations. But Sandra was staring at the photos and I could see the realization dawning on her face. Those guitars were supposed to be Jake's inheritance. Harold specifically mentioned them in his will. I swiped to another photo showing William at her computer. This shows William accessing financial accounts and typing while you sat beside him. Mom, do you remember what you were doing when this photo was taken? Sandra studied the image. We were refinancing the house. William was helping me with the paperwork. She paused. But I don't remember posing for any photos. These aren't posed photos, Mom. Someone was secretly recording what was happening in this house. William tried to grab my phone, but I pulled it back. Sandra, he's lying. These photos are obviously fake. He's trying to manipulate you. Actually, they're not fake, I said. They're from your neighbor's security cameras. Mrs. Henderson has had surveillance equipment installed for months. The color drained from William's face. He hadn't known about the external cameras. Jake suddenly spoke up, his voice confused and shaky. Why do I feel so tired all the time? And why can't I remember things clearly anymore? I looked directly at William. What kind of vitamins have you been giving my brother? This conversation is over, William said, moving toward Sandra. We're leaving. Now. But Sandra pulled away from him. William, I want answers. If you donated Harold's guitars to charity, why do these photos show them being sold? Because your son is lying. William's voice rose, and for the first time his veneer of calm control completely disappeared. He's trying to turn you against me because he wants your money for himself. What money? Sandra asked. We don't have any money. The $600,000 you borrowed against the house, I said quietly. The room went dead silent. Sandra's face went white. $600,000, William, you said we were refinancing for $200,000 to get better interest rates. William grabbed Sandra's arm roughly. We're leaving, right now. Don't listen to his lies. The physical aggression triggered something in Jake despite his drugged state. He stood up unsteadily. Don't touch her like that. That's when Detective Rodriguez and Agent Kim burst through the front door with backup officers behind them. FBI, nobody move. William released Sandra and backed toward the sliding glass door leading to the backyard. This is harassment. You have no right to be here. William Morrison, you're under arrest for identity theft, fraud, and conspiracy, Agent Kim announced, drawing her weapon. William's eyes darted around the room looking for an escape route. My name is William Hartwell. You have the wrong person. Detective Rodriguez pulled out a folder. We have court documents from 3 different states, William. Your fingerprints match records from Nevada, Oregon, and Arizona. The aliases don't work anymore. As the officers moved to arrest William, he made one last desperate attempt to maintain control over the situation. Sandra, don't let them do this. Everything I've done has been to protect you and secure our future together. But Sandra was staring at the loan documents Agent Kim had spread across the coffee table. $600,000, she whispered. How am I going to pay back $600,000? A paramedic who had arrived with the police was examining Jake, checking his pulse, and looking into his eyes with a small flashlight. Ma'am, your son shows signs of medication overdose. We need to get him to a hospital immediately. As William was handcuffed and read his rights, he turned to look at me one last time. The charming mask was completely gone, now replaced by cold hatred. You have no idea what you've just done, he said. Your family will lose everything because of your interference. But I wasn't listening to his threats anymore. I was watching my mother cry as she realized how completely she'd been manipulated, and my brother being helped to an ambulance because he'd been systematically poisoned for months. The confrontation was over, but the real work of rebuilding our family's life was just beginning. 4 months later, I sat in the living room of our family home watching Jake practice guitar on one of Dad's instruments that we'd managed to recover from William's online sales. The sound of his improving chord progressions mixed with the noise of contractors in the kitchen where Mom was overseeing the installation of new cabinets to replace ones that had been damaged during the FBI's search for hidden cameras. The legal proceedings had moved faster than anyone expected. William Morrison was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison after pleading guilty to charges of identity theft, elder fraud, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes across 4 states. His guilty plea was part of a cooperation agreement that helped authorities track down other members of his criminal network and recover assets for his victims. The financial recovery had been more complex than the criminal case. Through a combination of insurance claims, seized assets from William's offshore accounts, and a civil settlement with the banks that had processed the fraudulent loans, we'd managed to recover about 70% of the stolen money. The house was safe, and Mom's credit was slowly being repaired with help from a lawyer who specialized in identity theft cases. Jake's recovery had been the most challenging part of our family's healing process. The medication William had been giving him caused withdrawal symptoms that required medical supervision for several weeks. But as the drugs left his system, Jake's personality returned. He was sharper, more confident and determined to make up for the time he'd lost in William's fog of manipulation. "I keep thinking about how I acted that night when you came home," Jake said, setting down the guitar. "I was so cruel to you, and I don't even remember making the decision to behave that way." "Jake, you were being drugged. None of that was really you." "I know, but it still bothers me. I should have been protecting you and Emma, not helping some criminals steal from our family." Jake had enrolled in automotive technology classes at the community college and was thriving in the hands-on environment. The experience with William had given him a new appreciation for independence and self-reliance, but it had also taught him the importance of family loyalty. Emma emerged from the kitchen where she'd been helping Mom with the contractors. She was a different person than the scared, manipulated young woman I'd met in the park 4 months ago. The experience had sparked an interest in criminal justice and financial fraud prevention that led her to change her major from general studies to forensic accounting. "The new security system is being installed tomorrow," she announced, "but this time we're the ones controlling the cameras." Emma had become our family's unofficial financial manager, having learned more about budgeting and fraud protection than any 22-year-old should have to know. She'd also become an advocate for other families facing similar situations, volunteering with a nonprofit organization that helped identity theft victims. "Any word from Detective Rodriguez about the civil case?" Mom asked, joining us in the living room. "The class action lawsuit against Williams' network is moving forward," I replied. "Our lawyer thinks we might recover another $20,000 over the next year." But the money had never been the most important part of our recovery. The real healing had come through family therapy sessions where we'd learned to communicate more openly about our fears, needs, and expectations. Mom had been the hardest on herself throughout the recovery process. "I still can't believe I fell for his manipulation so completely," she said, settling into her favorite chair. "A man I'd known for 2 months, and I was ready to marry him and trust him with everything we had." "Sandra, you were targeted by a professional criminal who had years of experience manipulating people," our family therapist had explained during one of our sessions. "William didn't succeed because you were weak or gullible. He succeeded because he was skilled at exploiting normal human needs for companionship and security." The therapy had helped all of us understand how William's manipulation had worked. He'd identified Mom's fears about financial security after Dad's death, Jake's insecurities about his career prospects, and Emma's desire for independence. Then, he'd systematically used those vulnerabilities to drive wedges between us, while positioning himself as the solution to our problems. I think the hardest part for me was realizing how isolated we'd become from each other. I reflected. I was so focused on being the responsible provider that I wasn't really connecting with what you all needed emotionally. That had been my own lesson from the experience. In my effort to honor Dad's memory by taking care of the family financially, I'd created distance between myself and the people I was trying to protect. The weekly family dinners we'd established since William's arrest had taught me that being present was more important than just being financially supportive. "Remember when we used to have game nights when we were kids?" Emma asked. "We should start doing that again." "Only if you promise not to cheat at Monopoly like you used to," Jake replied, grinning. It was moments like these that reminded me how much we'd recovered. Not just financially, but emotionally. We were rebuilding traditions and connections that William had systematically tried to destroy. My phone buzzed with a text from David Chen, the private investigator who had become a friend throughout the legal proceedings. "Thought you'd want to know. William's conviction is helping prosecutors in Nevada build their case against his accomplice network. Your family's testimony is making a real difference for other victims." I shared the message with my family, and Mom smiled for the first time that day. "At least something good is coming from what we went through," she said. That evening, as we cleaned up after dinner together, I reflected on everything we'd learned over the past few months. The experience had taught us that family security doesn't come from money or perfect circumstances, but from honest communication and mutual support and the courage to protect each other from those who would exploit our love and trust. We'd also learned that recovery from betrayal and manipulation takes time, patience, and professional help. but it's possible to rebuild trust and create even stronger relationships than existed before the crisis. Most importantly, we discovered that our greatest protection against future manipulation wasn't better security systems or financial controls, but our commitment to maintaining open, honest dialogue with each other. William had succeeded because we'd stopped really talking to each other about our fears and concerns. He'd filled that communication gap with lies and false reassurances. Now we made time every week to check in with each other, share concerns, and discuss any major decisions before making them individually. We'd learned that family independence and family unity weren't contradictory goals, but complementary ones. As I locked up the house that night and set the new security system, I thought about the question Detective Rodriguez had asked me during our final case review. What do you want people to learn from your experience? The answer had become clear over the months of recovery and reflection. True family strength isn't measured by how well things go when life is easy, but by how family members support and protect each other when faced with real threats to their security and well-being. William Morrison had tried to destroy us by turning us against each other and isolating us from sources of help. But ultimately, his attacks had forced us to rediscover what we meant to each other and why our family bond was worth fighting for. 6 months later, Jake graduated from his automotive program with honors and landed a job at a respected local garage. Emma made the dean's list in her first semester of criminal justice studies. Mom started volunteering at a financial literacy organization that helps widows and single parents avoid predatory financial schemes. And me, I learned that coming home isn't about returning to a place, but about being with people who choose to face life's challenges together with honesty, courage, and unconditional love. The house we'd almost lost became more than just our family home. It became a symbol of what we could accomplish when we refused to let others exploit our care for each other. That's a lesson I'll carry with me for the rest of my life, and one I hope our story can share with others who might be facing similar challenges. Have you or someone you know ever experienced manipulation by someone who seemed too good to be true? What warning signs do you think families should watch for when new people enter their lives and immediately want to change important relationships or financial arrangements? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story helped you understand the importance of family communication and protection, please give it a like and share it with others who might benefit from our experience. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about overcoming life's unexpected challenges and building stronger family relationships. Thank you for taking the time to listen to our story, and remember that no matter how difficult your family situation might seem, there's always hope for healing and stronger connections when people commit to honesty, patience, and protecting each other from those who would exploit their love. Stay strong, stay connected, and never underestimate the power of family unity in the face of adversity.